Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now AMD's first foray into 3D V-cache processors was certainly interesting, and while the 9950X3D did not set the world on fire, in terms of gaming performance at stock settings, it did show some impressive scaling with higher clock speeds. I followed up that review by building a high-end AM5 system using parts from Asus and Corsair. And today, I want to show you another Ryzen 7009 X3D build, but this time based around MSI X870E CARBON motherboard. It's no secret that I've been a big fan of MSI's Extreme series motherboards for years now, so it seemed like only right that I get my hands on this new flagship board, which is adorned with plenty of nice features, including an Aero blade cooler design, integrated I/O, and some seriously beefy VRMs. Now to pair with my 9950X3D, I've also got a GPU that needs no introduction, the iGame RTX 5090D ADOC. This has been out for a few weeks now, and in that time I've managed to put about 200 hours on it across both my personal system and this one here. As far as I'm concerned, it remains the best single GPU gaming option currently available, and it's a joy to use, even if the price tag is somewhat eye-watering. I'm not going to do a full review today. Instead, I'll share some benchmarks from games I haven't tested before, and talk about my experience with this thing over the past month or so. But first, let me talk about this motherboard a little bit. As mentioned, it's called the X870E CARBON, and like most, if not all, of MSI's current Intel Z790 and AMD X8070 boards, it uses a new chipset called X870E, which offers enhanced power and overclocking capabilities, along with the usual CPU, DDR5, and PCIe 5.0 support. The X870E boards are all black too, so you can expect an understated look. The large heatsink that dominates the left side of the board is actually part of the PCIe slot and M2 shield. It's passively cooled, so there's no fan noise to worry about. And while we're on the subject of fans, let's talk about the board's bundled 290mm AIO. This is a big upgrade over last year's offerings. The radiator is made up of thicker fins, which means less restriction and better static pressure and dynamic efficiency. The pump is also more powerful. The RGB fans themselves are a good size, and they're all addressed individually, meaning we have complete control over how they look in software. Of course, there's plenty more to this board than just the cooler, and while I won't be able to cover everything today, let's focus on what I think is one of the coolest features: the BIOS. You may be familiar with MSI's Click BIOS from previous generations, but this is essentially a brand new interface that's much more user-friendly in my opinion. We get preset profiles for things like memory tweaking and overclocking, and these are clearly laid out alongside options to modify voltages, timings, and frequencies manually. There's also a section for monitoring, one for customizing fan and water cooler settings, and another for advanced users who want to tweak the more obscure settings. All in all, it feels very intuitive, and anyone looking to learn about what certain settings do will be pleased with the help files, which offer clear and concise explanations. On the topic of overclocking, the 9950X3D doesn't support traditional multiplier overclocking because, well, it's a 3D V-cache chip, but that doesn't mean we can't adjust timings of voltages. Of course, AMD's Precision Boost and Boost clocks are still active, so the processor will run up to its maximum safe frequency without any input from us. But adjusting the curve optimizer setting in the BIOS allows us to alter the power and heat target. Selecting higher values will increase the frequency, but reduce stability, whereas lower settings will result in less heat and more stability. This isn't exactly overclocking in the conventional sense, but it does allow us to squeeze a little more performance out of the processor. And today, I'll be using a setting of 70. The 9950X3D comes with a base clock of 4.5 GHz and a boost of 5.15. So under load, the processor will utilize all of its cores at 4.5 GHz. Then when it detects a lighter load, say while gaming, it will up the clock speed to 5.15 GHz, using just 8 of its cores. That is until things get demanding again, and then the cycle repeats itself. If you wanted to go higher though, liquid nitrogen would be your friend. But as my goal with this video was to showcase a simple air-cooled system, I decided to stop here. Moving on to the GPU, and I've been trying to work out how to start this section for the last few days. I keep thinking of metaphors and similes, but nothing seems right, so I'll just come right out and say it. The iGame RTX 5090D is a beast, and for me, it's still the best way to play games at 4K. Sure, there are cheaper options, even some built by AIB partners like MSI, but they don't offer the same level of performance, especially when it comes to ray tracing. I know 4K gaming isn't for everyone, but if you have a monitor with 100% coverage of the DCI-P3 color gamut and HDR support, then the 5090 is definitely worth considering. In terms of raw rasterization performance, it makes little difference whether you go for the Founders Edition card or the iGame model. It's the ray tracing chops that really set it apart from the rest. Now, I've tested 17 games so far, and in every single one, the 5090 pulls ahead of everything else, including the 49990, 4980, and even the 7900 XTX. Some titles don't offer much of a lead, but in others like Metro Exodus Enhanced, it can be more than double the performance. If you're wondering why I didn't include the 7900 XTX in the previous comparison, it's because I ran out of time. Don't worry, the full review is coming soon. So far, I've had zero problems with this card. It runs cool and quiet, doesn't make a peep under load, and I've yet to see temperatures exceed 70 degrees. It's also solid as a rock in terms of stability, and I've yet to experience any crashes or artifacts. It's worth noting that I've done most of my testing with the power target at 90% and the voltage at 110%. Though I have played some games with the power limit set to 70%, which drops the clock speed by about 190 Hz, but it makes no difference to the frame rate in AAA titles. In fact, I'd probably recommend keeping the power limit low because the card will remain quieter and cooler. The custom backplate also helps with this, and it feels like a must-have feature. It's not something I'd usually go for because I've always found them to be pretty heavy and somewhat flimsy, but MSI have struck a good balance between weight and sturdiness here. It doesn't weigh much more than the reference design, but it feels stronger and it looks great with the RGB lighting. Then we have the exterior design. I really like the angular lines and overall aesthetic. It fits in nicely with my current setup, and the 3 fans do a great job of keeping everything cool and quiet. When it comes to the user experience, I'm a big fan of the screen on the back too. Having quick access to things like the power consumption is very useful, and I can imagine it being handy for overclockers who might want to keep an eye on things. All in all, it's been a pleasure using this card over the last month or so. And while I can't comment on long-term reliability just yet, I can say that it's been flawless thus far, and I don't anticipate any issues. That's all for this one. Then thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think of this combination down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Leave a dislike if you didn't subscribe, if you haven't done so already. And hopefully, I'll see all of you in the next one.